Hey there, kitten caboodles. How are you? It's Butterfly. So glad that you came back to see me. So welcome. Welcome back. I have a very fun exercise to share with you today. Now, if you are a card reader or familiar with tarot or oracle card readings and the process of having your cards read, this exercise that I'm going to share with you is something that I've kind of morphed. I don't want to say invented, but I came up with by tweaking things that we already do with card reading. So, some of the frustrations that I've had as a card reader over years is that I don't do prediction. I don't do fortune telling. I don't do, and also the concept of time when you're doing a card spread, past, present, future. The whole concept of time, I think, is very relative. So, I listen to card readers and how they read things, and you take what resonates with you and you leave the rest is kind of the mantra, right? So if you can find something useful, then take it, and if you don't, then leave it there. So that sometimes is a little bit frustrating for me. I tend these days I'm doing a lot more of reading cards for myself as my own sense of introspection, and that's basically how I started out with tarot from the very beginning, 30 years ago. Is just basically doing a lot of it for myself. I really do enjoy working with people as well. But a lot of times people think that it's fortune telling, and so when I'm coming forth with asking them for questions, and they want to, the querent asks a focused question like, well, is this man going to ever be in my romantic life? Whatever. And there's a predictive value to that. And there's also like a fatalistic sort of a value in that. Like, what does fate have, prescribed for me somewhere in the future, just so that I know before I get there? So it's kind of like relinquishing your power. I use the cards to know, hey, give me some ideas as to what I can do right now today. Does this really matter to me? How much does it matter to me? What can I do to reach my next step? If my goal is too lofty, let's, break it down into 10 different steps. What's my next? So I'm looking for different increments to get to where I want to be. And it's a lot more of an introspective kind of an exercise than let's just see if you can predict for me what the future holds. And if some of it is a hit or some of it is a miss, then I take it or I leave it. I really have gotten, a little frustrated with that part of card reading, because it's kind of like taking historically the card game, and it's kind of using it in modern day, self-help, mental health, with that kind of a flavor. And some of it just is incongruent for me. It doesn't jive. So what I've done is I've taken what I know about card reading, and I've tweaked it a little bit. I've tweaked it. So I'm going to share that with you for what it's worth, and see, if you like the idea, you can look at it and leave some comments. I'd love to have some feedback. But anyways, I've been doing this, and it really works for me because I use it as a tool of introspection. Yeah. So what you're going to need is recipe cards. These are some blank recipe cards, just the regular, cheapo. I use these all the time. They're really good for writing all kinds of stuff. You burn it, you write it, you forget it, you ditch it. I love recipe cards. If we're looking for tools of the witch, the pen and the recipe card, pen and paper would definitely be, they belong on or around my altar space. So there we go. You're also going to need some markers, if you like using color. If not, then trusty old pen. And I tend to use a pencil and a big eraser because I'm quite fond of mistakes. So a lot of my cards have been written over years, and so I use a lot of erasers. So this is not going to be a very visual sort of eye candy sort of a video. That's just not where I'm at. I'm not into editing and doing all this stuff. I'm just giving you some ideas. And hey, if you want to make a video about it, make it sexy, that's great. But we're doing recipe cards, baby. So here are the kind of focus questions. So let's just say I'm coming to my table, my altar space, my whatever, and I'm going to do a reading for myself. Okay? Instead of going to books, which cause me frustration, I go to my cards now. And I will focus on personal development kind of issues. Personal development. So this is just like a section of some personal development things that have come up over time that I will kind of share. So on the issue of cleaning house, sometimes I want to do that. Sometimes I just pull something randomly out of here and say, okay, my reading today, my exercise today is going to be about this. Oh, it's about cleaning house. Sometimes I'm like so not motivated to clean the house, and so I'll look for it, or I'll create a card with some questions, and then I'll do my reading. Okay, so that's how that's happening. So these are kind of equivalent to the querence question in the tarot reading. So with regard to cleaning house, what am I going to focus on with regard to cleaning house? Well, cleaning house can reflect my inner cleaning, right? So to motivate myself to actually clean a space in my room, and I won't do the whole thing from top to bottom because that's just nuts for me, I will focus on a room or on a dresser or on a closet or on, the shoes at the entrance or whatever. And I will reflect at that time as I'm doing my cleaning how it's about my own inner cleaning. As I'm doing it, it can be very meditative. As I'm doing it, can be very ritualistic. First, you start from left to right. First, then you clean from top to bottom. Then you vacuum first, and then you do you sweep first, and then you vacuum, and then you mop, and then you spray, and then I smudge or put some incense once I'm all done, or I burn a candle to pick up all the residual sort of energies that need to burn after the space has been cleaned. That can be really, really ritualistic. And then it gives me such satisfaction once it's done, because it's hard to get motivated to clean, but once it's done, that's where I get the joy. So focusing on this is my self-development piece. Let's just call this the querent question. These are the issues that I'm going to focus on. Okay? Now, having said that, I have different cards. These cards are representing the placement of the card spread. So the card spread, if it's time related, then you might get past, present, and future, right? And I get all tongue-tied when I think about prediction and that sort of thing. So instead of that, my card spread is cognitive, behavioral, and emotional. You see where I'm going with this? So I've got the querent question, and then I got the card spread. And just so that I have a template on my table, I put out these 3 cards as the placements for the reading. Okay? So on the emotional, and it doesn't really matter which sort of one goes first or next. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can play with it. So the emotional, how do I feel about this in relation to your querent question? In relation to cleaning the house? In relation to while I clean the house, I'm reflecting on how it's giving me a pensive exercise as I do some inner spring cleaning. How do I feel about this? I feel, and then you explain how you feel with the card that has laid upon it. So let's just see here. I'm going to take my tarot leaf cards. And I suggest using cards that you may be a little bit less familiar with. I'm most familiar with my tarot cards. And so I've, gotten several decks that are not tarot related. And it's just because I'm so unfamiliar with it that it makes my brain work a little bit more for answers. So here's candle. Okay, so in relation to this emotion, how do I feel about this, about cleaning the house, about it being ritualistic, about it being an inner reflection of how I'm processing things? Well, here's a candle. You will be shown the way. So you can do some introspective exercises about how that feels. You will be shown the way. Okay, so this is part of my reading. Maybe that's telling me not to worry about it right now, to just get into the mode, into the cleaning. And as I'm cleaning, I will be shown what sort of emotions come up. And maybe I can record them while I'm cleaning. Maybe it will just become clearer as I'm going. Perhaps you have some ideas about how you would interpret this if it came up on this position in the card spread. The candle, it says you will be shown the way. What does a candle mean for you? For me, as I'm cleaning, as I've explained, the candle comes at the end of the cleaning. If it comes in before, I risk kind of like knocking it over or it's in the way or whatever. But perhaps you'd like to try and burn a candle as you're cleaning as part of the ritual of cleaning. And maybe it motivates you to have a scented candle, and the smell elicits some emotions and might motivate you to kind of get some of it done. Okay, so you get the idea there. Behavioral. And I'll just grab another card here. And it talks about hills. Hills, obstacles to overcome. Well, okay, so that card is going to go on that spot in the card spread. With regard to my querying question about the cleaning, how I feel about it is dealt with. Now, behavioral. I'm going to be looking at some obstacles. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, yes, I recognize that cleaning for me is an obstacle. I really do not like having to do it. I do it a lot automatically because the dishes have to be done 4 times a day, at least in my house. I clean the bathtubs. I clean the toilets. I mow the lawn. I do the laundry. A lot of that is automatic. Why? Because the laundry basket got full. That's my cue to get that done. And it's an obstacle because I don't feel like it. So now I'm relating back to this question and saying, the feeling that comes with it is disgust, unmotivation. You see how the answers are going to be shown along the way? This is what the exercise is. It's a cognitive exercise. Incidentally, reading cards is a great way to avoid cleaning. I'd rather be doing this. Okay, so obstacles to overcome. Now, I did write some templates here that you can use every time that a card is on this place in the spread. So what can I do in the face of this issue? What can I do in the face of this? Well, one of the things that I can do in the face of this is to do one thing. Doing the entire house is too big an obstacle. I'm not motivated. I don't feel like it. But the whole job will be a little bit easier if I just do the dishes right now. If I just fill the bucket. Once the bucket is filled with warm water, mopping the floor won't seem like such a big task, right? So that's what you can do. One thing first. Small increments, which is this is inspired by cognitive behavioral therapy. This is not cognitive behavioral therapy, but I took my inspiration and applied it to card reading because I find imagery in cards is like you can use it for absolutely everything in your life. I love it. The second question that I have here to focus behaviorally is what elements can I influence? And the next one is, are there factors over which I have no control? There are some things that when your focus question comes up, there are some things that you can change, and there's some things that are just beyond your control. Outside of the issue of cleaning, if my focus question had to do with a person who's, being a tyrant in my life, do I have control over their behavior? No, I only have control over my emotions, the way that I let it affect me. I only have control over my thoughts about them. Oh, you're a grumble, 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 and calling him names or yelling. No, I have also control where I can remove myself from the situation and remove myself from being further antagonized. Okay, so behaviorally, you do have choices, and you break it down into small increments. So there's a lot of thinking that can get done. I'm using the example of a cleaning sort of a query because it's nice and simple, but this can be as complex as you make it. Hills. These are your obstacles in dealing with somebody who's being a tyrant in your life. Well, the tyrant is an authority figure at my job. The tyrant is somebody who's in my home. How much control do you have in your job? How much control do you have in your home? Can you remove yourself from those situations? So behaviorally, there's some things that you can do. And you might want to kind of break it up and look at that. The other thing is, how in tarot you look at how the cards sort of relate to each other in the position that they have to each other. Well, we can do that with cognition, behavior, and emotion. This is me operating in a psycho-spiritual sort of a way. I really enjoy looking at things psycho-spiritually. It kind of interconnects for me very well. So in the way that when you're doing a tarot spread, the cards relate to each other based on the position that they come in, you can do the same here because your emotions can influence your behavior. The other way around, your behavior can influence your emotions, can't they? Right? So your behavior, if you ride a bike and you fall, it'll affect your emotions. You are hurt and you are sad and in pain. Your emotions can affect your behavior. I got angry because I felt disregarded. Those are my feelings. And so I threw the remote control against the wall. That's the behavior. Okay. So that's, it's kind of giving some maladaptive behaviors, but it's giving you, an idea of how to look at it. Cognition. Cognition is the next position in the tarot spread for me, or the oracle card in this instance. And I'm picking the card Woman. Woman, incidentally, these are beautiful cards, right? Woman, dealings or relationship with a woman. Depending on how, fluid your understanding is of gender identity, you may or may not want to interpret this one way or the other. You always have license to kind of look through the deck, omit any cards that you want. Perhaps some are more triggering, perhaps some you just don't jive with, whatever. So I pulled the card Woman. So dealings or relationship with a woman. In a fortune card, a fortune telling kind of a reading, sipping tea in the 1800s, you might want to say, oh, you're going to meet a woman and, this person's going to bring some obstacles and then you'll light a candle. I have no idea how they would do it. But isn't this a beautiful card too? And I'm also going to show you the hills a little bit more because I'm not sure that I really kind of showed you. So woman, in card reading, we might talk about that female energy. If your understanding of gender identity is very fluid, that may or may not be important. You may or may not have a female energy on your altar. There's really so many ways that we can kind of look at this that I'm just going to leave it up to interpretation for you. But with cognition, I have written some questions for this placement in the tarot spread. So, what are my thoughts about this? Well, I think do I think that cleaning is woman's work? I don't know. What are my thoughts about this? Do I think I need to hire a woman to do this work? Do I want to do some cleaning so that I can then have my friends over for tea? And some of which are women. Is it a very female energy to be working in my home and making it receptive, female receptive, for anyone coming in, and welcoming, to be, the hostess, to be the welcoming energy. So there's a lot of introspection. You can go all kinds of different ways with this. And then I also kind of gave some subtitles to what are my thoughts about this. Automatic thoughts. Do I have some automatic thoughts? Like, automatic thoughts would be your knee-jerk reaction to this situation. And they usually have a negative connotation. So, what? Are you telling me that cleaning my house is women's work? How offensive. I am offended. I am going to resist cleaning my home because my automatic thought is that this is demeaning to me. Is that my automatic thought? Self-limiting beliefs is another way of thinking about whatever card this is that popped up in relation to the queerance question. So self-limiting beliefs would be, I can't do this. I don't have the energy. I go to work so many hours per week. I, tend to the pets and the kids and the this and that, and I have nothing left to give. At the end of my day, I just want to ... with my feet up. And I just can't. I can't. I have too much. I'm not good enough. I can't tackle this problem, whatever it is. Back in the scenario where you have this tyrant in your life, let's just say we're not doing the cleaning question, we'll do the tyrant question. I can't leave my job. I am subjected to this tyrant for the rest of my days because I need the money and I'm never going to find another job like it. Those are all self-limiting beliefs. Okay? Or because my partner has this job and he works days and I work nights, so I have to stay awake all night and sleep all day so that I can, we can work in tandem with the kids and avoid paying daycare prices or whatever. And so self-limiting beliefs, you're living in a restricted sort of a logic. Possibilities of empowerment. Are there any possibilities of empowerment, or is this all negative thinking, right? How can let's go back to the cleaning question, the cleaning sort of theme. How can I make this more empowering instead of feeling like I'm being devalued as having to be the only person who cleans? Well, we can look at who's living in the house and see if cleaning can be done every other day by somebody in the house, or if certain tasks can be shared. There's some problem solving there. There's some empowering sort of possibilities so that we cut down the tasks for different people. Or if I have to do my 5 tasks, my share of the work, and I still don't feel like doing that, how can I feel empowered about doing it? Well, it doesn't have to take, 5 hours a night. Maybe I can do 20 minutes 3 times in a night and reward myself with putting my feet up 3 times that night and really, really enjoy that relief time after 20 minutes of cleaning has been done. For me, also the ritual sort of it is motivating to clean. So I will take like a spray bottle with water and I will put in an amount of essential oils that I really like. Arousing smelling essential oils like orange and citrus, or calming like lavender, depending on the room that I'm in. So if I'm cleaning my kitchen, I want it to be very invigorating and food related. So I'll spray orange as I'm cleaning. That becomes part of my ritual and it encourages me to do the cleaning because I really, really like the smell. Also, I'll sleep so much better if my room smells like lavender, depending on the product. And so that is part of the ritual where I'm really kind of, okay, now my bed is made. Now I get to put a little sachet of, aventurine stones underneath my pillow, inside my pillowcase, and it'll make me sleep better. So that can be part of the ritual and make it really rewarding so that there's little perks in there for you. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of how to do kind of a reading, but it's not a reading in that there's no predictive value in it. You're reading what's in your mind. And I think that I'm introducing something kind of that has been done, but in a way that hasn't been done specifically that I've seen. So you get how I work with querent questions. I'm going to give you a few other examples of querent questions, things that I develop that apply to me. When I come to my table, sometimes I just don't know what the heck I'm going to be reading about. Like, do I really need to kind of sit here and start inventing a whole process for myself? Or what if I'm just kind of replaying the same ideas over and over again? Doesn't that get kind of boring? So what I do is I shake it up a bit, and I kind of give myself these exercises so that when I get to the table, I have something more than nothing to start with, and I don't have to start reinventing the wheel right away. I can just kind of go, oh, no, I don't like looking at that. Yeah, that one, I'm going to do that one, Okay, so some of the questions that I will tackle, if I'm up to it, if I'm feeling particularly energetic and ready for this kind of question, I will do a reading about past trauma. Okay, here's a newsflash. Most people have something traumatic that happens. Who is it that said, no one gets through life unscathed? I think there's a shame around trauma where we feel like we've been targeted, and so therefore we somehow deserve to have that trauma. And so if we don't talk about it, then it was like, nobody's going to know that it's ever happened, and that's better for me. But then you don't work out through those issues, right? There's a lot of shame around trauma. So sometimes I like to do that introspection. It's only me. It's only my cards. I can journal about it if I want to and then burn the paper so nobody knows. But I also become a lot clearer about the things that have happened and what control I have over it, what I don't have control over it. You see how the questions kind of come up, how it affected me emotionally, how it affected me, cognitively. What were my thoughts then? What are my thoughts now? If this happened to me when I was, an adolescent, who was there to protect me? Why did I not go to them? Did I feel like they would protect me? So you can go to those sort of, if I'm an adult now, if I saw somebody who's 16 years old in that situation, what would I do? Would I intervene or would I blame them? Why would people have blamed me when I was 16? Is that really fair? So you can ask yourself those kind of questions. And that is where you're kind of giving yourself that cognitive, emotional, behavioral attention. When you're looking at issues of trauma, I would say also find a psychotherapist, a qualified counselor, somebody who's licensed and registered with a responsible body to reflect back some of the thoughts that you're having, because you don't want to kind of go through past issues and re-traumatize yourself by going back to past issues and just reliving it and rehashing it and staying in the past. So you want to kind of be aware of that. Okay. So in that, I'm going to pass through a few of these cards. In this question, in this theme, I look at my regret. Now, some of these I've made for the video so that they're not like personal information and stuff. It's just kind of giving you a prompt for what you might want to look at. So let's just say I'm coming here for my reading and I see my regret. Oh, my regret. Do I have a regret? We might have a regret. There might be something you regret. Let's focus on that. You put down the cards, cognitive, behavioral, emotional, and then you pull the cards and you say, what do I regret? Pull a card. What do I regret? A whale. Great worry over nothing. Ha! So maybe regret is wasted energy. There, that reading's done. This one, I'm focusing on how I can support someone else. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own process that we forget. Be helpful to someone else. Be of service to someone else. We look at how unfair everything is to us and how they were rude and how if they're having a bad day, don't take it out on me. But maybe you can be good to somebody else just because we expect other people to do it to us. So let's find some ways to be supportive to someone else just because. To pick up my mood. Sometimes I need to have some ways to pick up my mood. So I'll put down my emotional, my behavioral, my cognitive cards, and I will reflect on what I need to pick up my mood. I'm feeling a little bit low. What are my resources? Well, let's pick up this card and see what's there. Ha! Heart. Love. So in emotion, love, deep affection, and caring. Does this necessarily mean romantic love? Of course not. It could be the love of art. So if I'm feeling down, which is the question, if you want to pick up your mood, do something you love. Maybe you love movement, so do some exercise. That will elicit, move some endorphins. Your endorphins will increase. Those are your feel-good chemicals in your body. So exercise, do something you love. You might want to stay away from things that give you a dopamine hit, like addictive behaviors like gambling. Oh, I love gambling. I love having a cigarette. Oh, I love having that substance. You want to look at healthy choices, right? Okay. What else? Give me some other prompts. When I feel drained, which is different from feeling down. Then you do a reading about that. What makes me sad? What makes me happy? Relationships. Here's one about relationships. So my question here would be to invite people for an afternoon tea, to bake with my kids, and to focus on conversation and building rapport. I remember writing this. These things don't really kind of follow any particular formula because they're just basically big themes that come up in my life. And so they're just something to focus on when I come to the table for reading. So they're going to be incongruent one to the other. This one was when I was focusing on how to improve the relationships in my life, especially in a time of COVID when you can't see anybody, right? There's some times where we're not in a particular kind of lockdown, we can have people over. And I remember really kind of putting in time pre-COVID with regard to having afternoon tea. So that was a way for me to invite people into my life, not have huge expenses with, going to a restaurant or going to a movie where you kind of ignore each other for 2 hours and then say goodbye or whatever. Also, I would have like board games and stuff, where you have snacks and board games. So afternoon tea, inviting people to my home was a way for me to manage expenses and have focus on one person or two people in particular and improve those relationships because it kind of manages dialogue. It also kind of gives me some focus on what kind of conversation we have with each other and how well do I know this person and how can I get to know this person better and do I want to continue to know this person a little bit more. And sometimes having afternoon tea or playing a board game, very low key environment, is a great way to do that. So this was about improving relationships in my life, and so I would do a reading about that: emotion, behavior, cognitive. How do I feel about that? What can I do to improve? Which is where I was improving the relationship with my kids. That came up in a reading by doing baking with them to prepare for the afternoon tea. And then they would take part. Sometimes they were at an age where they were not kind of like having so much focus on having afternoon tea. They'd eat something and then run away and go and play something at that time. But they would really enjoy doing the baking with me prior to. So I was able to kind of enjoy that time with my kids prior to having the tea time with, adult company. And that was all about improving my relationship. So that was kind of some problem solving that came out of tarot readings for me by doing this technique. Yeah, and focus on conversation to build rapport with them. So this one, goal number 2, I guess there's goal number 1 somewhere. Yeah, so this was about focusing on goals. So if you have a goal in particular that you want to focus on, that can be a query. If you want to focus on going back to school and getting a diploma of sorts, how do you feel about that? What do you think about that? What can you do to get there? Is it too expensive? Okay, so how can you chip away? Can you take one course at a time? This is it's also sort of like introspection, but also problem solving. because your emotions and your thoughts and your behaviors, your actions, um, are intermingled. So what do you call it? Achieving goals, a vision. My vision, this was another day, right? A vision at home. I want financial comfort and a little bit more, not all derelict furniture and decor. So what can I do about that is clean and maintain. So some of it, what I was thinking about at that time, I remember when I was doing this and kind of wanting to do a reading for myself about this. Sometimes I felt powerless in my life because of financial situations. It's you if you have an adequate income, but then you all of a sudden you have added huge expenses. I was left with derelict furniture. Well, I happen to also like old furniture. This one was free. This set was free. This one was $5. But sometimes the furniture can look a little derelict because, like, even my dressers, the drawers don't work well. But they were affordable. The couch is secondhand. Actually, it's probably third hand. Very sinky. And but I'm really happy to have a couch because I didn't have one before. So I felt really horrible about being in a financial situation where I was always making money, paying money, and not having enough to have comfort in my home. This affected the way that I felt about my home. It affected my relationships and who I wanted to invite into my home because of shame. It influenced the way that I felt about my children, like if they could have friends over, and if they were, if the friends were kind of judging, and how that judgment affected the kids. And so there was a lot of feelings around home and finances and stuff. I mean, you can have a home, but the condition of it really matters. So what the kind of problem solving that I did with the emotional, cognitive, and behavioral sort of reflections, is that I decided, if you don't have $1 million to like get somebody to renovate and buy all new stuff, then what you have to do is edit. You have to get rid of the stuff that's unsightly. You have to clean and maintain the stuff that you have. And so the focus becomes fewer things that are just better things that you have, so that you don't see like additional clutter and unkept things. If you don't have money to repaint, then sand the furniture that you have and then really enjoy shabby chic. You have to tweak it a little bit. So that's what that was about, that reading. It was very useful for me. My vision. Some businesses have their vision and their mission statements. I created a vision and I wanted to kind of know what that vision was going to be. So what is your vision? Do a card reading and try and discover your vision. Well, what are your emotions about having a vision? What would be the purpose of having a vision? How would that affect you emotionally? Cognitively. This is behaviorally. What can I do in the face of this? What elements can you influence? What are the factors over which you have no control? Okay, so what I ended up doing after that reading is creating that in my interactions, I want to promote peace and wellness. And so that ends up being my vision and my focus throughout the day as I interact with people. I want to promote peace and wellness. So if I come up with somebody who's kind of getting into a conversation that seems pretty tedious or pointless or angry, I try and maintain my vision. Is this promoting peace and wellness, or is this conflict and trauma? So it tells me a little bit more about how I can deal with that in the moment. Anyway, so you kind of get the idea. I don't know if that really kind of jives with you. I can babble quite a bit, but this is a technique that I have been using for years. And there's more cards than just this. But these are just some that I decided I felt comfortable enough to share with. And you can use any cards, obviously. You can use any cards. So if you want to use tarot cards with this cognitive, behavioral, emotional sort of tarot spread, card spread, oracle spread, then do that. But I really like using cards that are not tarot related in this. Now, some of them that kind of are tarot related are stuff that are of fables around the world, like this. beneath the moon. So you can look at a fable. Each fable would have a lesson. Each lesson could relate to cognitive, behavioral, emotional. This one's also tarot related, but it's herbs, right? The herbal tarot. So that is tarot related, but you can also look at the healing properties of each plant that comes up in that position in the spread. And perhaps that would give you. Here's another one. Tarot-esque, and it is with regard to fables once again, but about working with your inner child. And that has been very helpful. Things that are not tarot related, I quite like this one with Colette Baron-Reid. So we're working with the map cards. This is the Enchanted Map. This one's a special deck, and it works particularly well with this spread because I find that these are really introspective. And for me, these work particularly well with this spread. These ones do too because they're medicine cards. Do I have a? Oh, the book is inside. The book is inside the medicine cards. And this is more of a native sort of indigenous influence into these cards. And so what they are is medicine cards are. Each card has an animal on it. I think I have featured these on my channel before. And each animal has a message or is a medicine, and it brings healing because they all have a strength. Like, for instance, the rabbit is fear, and has a little fable around that. Each animal has a little, some of them have a fable around it. So this one's pretty interesting to work with this. And then this is another favorite of mine. So these are the soul cards, and these don't necessarily have any. These are special for me. Soul cards are very special because of the imagery. They are the cards that there's no set interpretation for each one, but your mind can go anywhere. So this might be good if you can find words when you're looking at images. If you need to have something that gives you a little bit of words to interpret, then you might want to go to the tea leaf fortune cards because it'll give you a cue. It'll be a quick and easy way to interpret a prompt for these cards, this reading. But if you really want to kind of just sit and meditate and really look at various images, these are very special decks. Sometimes I have to say for myself, my feeling that it elicits, like I have to be very careful when I'm going to use the soul cards, because sometimes they take me into very trauma-related memories. And you can see in this picture, I don't know, this doesn't elicit childhood happiness and innocence. It doesn't, look like a party zone for me. This kind of one looks like somebody who's screaming, and there's like depths of despair there and some mountains. So I don't know if this would really work. But if you can look at things and kind of look at this as a community, perhaps this card could be like a community of people thinking and helping and supporting you from afar, with the image of the person in the middle. That could be quite supportive. So even before you do your reading, you can omit some cards that you don't want to have in the deck and use just the cards that you want. But this one can be pretty interesting, looking at especially if you're working with a therapist in CBT. Some of these cards can be a lot more useful when you have somebody there to work with you. But if you're working introspectively on yourself, you might discover that you have issues or problems or concerns and things that you want to develop and elaborate on and get some help on, some psychotherapy on, some counseling. And so you might not be aware of those issues until you actually start doing some introspection with the cards. And so this would be a good springboard to get to that space before you look, because then you'll have an idea of what you want to work on when you go to a counselor. You might know that there's something that's not working. You might not know how to explain it. So doing an exercise like this card related, technique that I'm showing you can give you an idea of what you might want to talk about with a counselor, and then you have some direction once you get there. So I hope this was helpful. Certainly babbled for quite a while, and maybe it's useful to you. If you are interested in this or knowing more about something, feel free to ask me some questions. I really, really, really feel validated in a codependent way when I receive some positive feedback in the comments down below. So, please feel free to say hello, feel free to comment, and just be reflective. I really like to hear from you. Onward and upward. I hope this finds you well. Take care and have a great day.